Good day, students. This is part one of the mixed review, getting ready for the test. We're going to go over operation of functions and inverses on this part, and then on the next part we'll talk about conic sections. All right. So let's take a look at the questions. Question number one. We asked to find f plus x of g. F plus g of x for the following functions. So what does f plus g of x? What does that command mean? What does this f plus g of x mean? Well, this simply means f of x plus g of x. So this operation is telling us to add these two functions, all right? So I'm just going to put f of x on top, and I'm just going to line it up with g of x in such a way that columns with like degrees line up, and then I'll just combine coefficients, all right? So f of x is 6x squared plus 9x plus 8. So this is the degree 0 column, the degree 1 column, and the degree 2 column. G of x is 4x plus 6, so let's put 4x under here since it's degree 1. And then 6 degree 0 goes at the last term. Alright? So there goes the setup. Now all we are just going to do, since we're adding, we just add coefficients. Nothing happened to the degrees, okay? So for the 0 degree column, 8 plus 6 is 14. And then 9x plus 4x, you just add the coefficients, is 13x positive. And then 6x has nothing to add to, so it just remains the same, 6x squared. So the answer is 6x squared plus 13x plus 14. Answer is option letter D. Alright, let's move on to the next question. Question 2, we asked to find f minus g of x for f of x equals 12x plus 15. And g of x equals negative 20x plus 2x plus 30. So what does f minus g of x mean? Well, just like the previous problem, f minus g of x is f of x minus g of x. Okay? So we're going to stack it up, f of x, and then we're going to subtract g of x. Alright? So f of x is 12x plus 15. You notice I left some space here because I noticed that g of x is a second degree term, so I need to leave space for the second degree column. Alright, so minus parenthesis, g of x is going to be negative 20x squared plus 2x plus 30. Okay, this minus basically means I'm going to add this to the opposite of that, so I need to distribute this negative to all three terms in g of x. Okay, and then I'll add the opposite. So this is going to become, notice that f of x stays the same, 12x plus 15. And then g of x, you're now going to take the opposite of every single term. So negative 20x squared becomes 20x squared minus, plus 2x becomes minus 2x, plus 30 becomes minus 30. And then we just add downwards, okay? Notice that whenever you're subtracting, you just add your first function to the opposite of the second function. Alright, now that we're adding, we're just going to combine coefficients. So adding straight down, plus 15 minus 30 is negative 15. Plus 12 minus 2 is positive 10x. And then this just has nothing to be subtracted from, so it's just 20x squared. Okay? So 20x squared plus 10x minus 15. Correct answer is option letter C. Alright? Okay. Now moving along. Alright, so for number 3, we're going to do f times g of x. Now what does f times g of x mean? f times g of x simply is a shorthand form of writing f of x multiplied by g of x. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply these two functions vertically. You can multiply horizontally by distributing, by foiling if you want. Okay, so we're going to do f of x multiplied by g of x. Okay, notice I'm going to set it up. I'm going to set it up by lining up columns, terms of the same degree on the same column. Okay, so 3x squared minus 4x minus 5 for f of x, and then for g of x, I'm going to put 11x under here for the first degree column minus 3 as the 0 degree column. Okay? Alright, now we're going to multiply. That's the operation that we're carrying out here. So I'm going to multiply as we normally multiply digits. Okay, so negative 3 I'll multiply by everything, line it up here. And then 11x I'll multiply by everything and line it up down here. Okay. All right, so minus 3 times minus 5 is positive 15. Negative 3 times negative 4x is positive 12x. Negative 3 times 3x squared is negative 9x squared. Okay? Now I'm going to distribute the first degree term. 11x times negative 5 is negative 55x. 11x times 4 is negative 44x squared. 11x times 3 is 33x to the third. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is just add downwards, because I've already lined up the terms in like degree columns, so adding will be easy. So this one is just positive 15. 12 minus 55 is going to be negative 43, negative 43x. And then if I combine these two, negative 9 minus 44, signs are the same, you add and keep the sign, negative 53x squared. And then the last one is going to be 33x to the third. Okay, so there goes your final result. So the answer to this, let's see which options match. We're going to be real careful with the letters, with the signs here. 3x squared minus 53x squared minus 43x. It's not this one. Can be this. This is wrong also. Wrong. The correct answer is option letter D. Okay, so our answer for this number is D. Moving along, question number 4. What is f over g of x? So for f over g of x, we just basically divide the top by the bottom. F over x over g of x, that is what f over g of x means. So after doing that, there's a special constraint, which is that the denominator g of x can never be 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve that. F of x is 20x to the third minus 4x squared plus 10x minus 13. And that whole thing divided by negative 12x squared minus 7. Okay, but the denominator cannot be 0, so 12x squared, actually negative 12x squared minus 7 cannot be 0. So what does that mean about x squared? So we can get x squared by itself. We just add 7 to both sides and divide by negative 12, okay? So add 7. We have negative 12x squared equals 7, and then divide by negative 12. And then our constraint would be that x squared cannot be, so this is cannot be negative 7 over 12, because these 12s divide out here, and then you're left with negative 7 over 12. So our correct answer, let's see, is option, what number is this? This is number 4. So correct answer is option letter D, because x squared. C looks very similar, but it's just x, but it's x squared that cannot be negative 7 over 4. So our answer is option D. All right, let's move on to question number 5. Now this is a composition problem. We have to do 2 compositions. The first one is G composed with H of x. Now what does this mean? It means that G is a parent and this is the input function, and I'm going to be plugging G into H. Okay, so this is the same thing as G of H of x. All right, so let's start out by writing the parent function G of x, which is 7x. Now I'm going to get it prepped for the input, so I replace my x's with parentheses, G parentheses equals 7. Now how big is the input function? F is pretty big, is a 4th term cubic, okay? Cubic quadrinomial. So what we're going to do is make the parentheses sufficiently large to compensate for its large size. Now the name of the input function is h of x. put a comma here. And h of x is basically negative 5x to the third plus 9x squared minus 2x plus 2. So that's what I'm going to plug in here. Okay, put the name in the left side. This is the input, h of x. And then the value goes here, which is negative 5x to the third plus 9x squared minus 2x plus 2. Alright, to simplify this, I'll distribute 7 to everything. So we're going to have negative 35x to the third. You distribute 7 to this, that, and that. And then 7 times 9 is 63. X squared minus 7 times 2 is 14x plus 14. And there you have it. Okay, so let's see what the correct... Well, we have to do the reverse composition. Okay, so let's do the reverse composition, which is h circle g of x. What does this mean? It means that h is composed with g, which is the same thing as h of g of x, because in this case, the input function is h is being plugged into, the input function is g, and g is being plugged into h. Okay, so let's write out the parent function first, h of x, which is negative 5x to the third plus 9x squared minus 2x plus 2. Let's get it prepped for the input function, which is g of x. So I'll clear out the parentheses, or clear out the x's, and replace them with parentheses. So I'm going to have h parentheses equals negative 5. Now, how big is the input function? The input function is g, right? G is just 7x. It's just one term, so it's not that big. So we don't need to make big parentheses here. So parentheses cube plus 9 parentheses square minus 2 parentheses plus 2. Okay? Now let's plug in the input function. The name of the input function is g of x, and the value is 7x. So put 7x here. Let me use a different color so you can understand this. Let's use green this time. So g of x is the input function. So 7x here, 7x here, and 7x here. All right. Now let's go ahead and simplify. Simplify that. We're going to have 5 times 7 to the third. 5 times 7 to the third. If you do that in your calculator, you're going to have 5 times 7 to the third. Well, let's set it up so you can see what I'm doing. So this becomes negative 5 times 7 to the third, x to the third. So you distribute this third power to the 7 and to the x, to both terms, okay, to the 7 and to the x. All right, plus 9 times, you're going to square 7 and the x also, so 7 square x squared minus 2 times 7 is just 14x plus 2. Okay, now if you multiply this out, you're going to get negative 1,715 x to the third, and then the next one, let me do that with my calculator. So we're going to have negative 5 times 7 caret 3, that's no 1,715, and then 9 times 7 caret 2, that's 441, okay? Plus 441x squared, plus 441x squared, minus 14x plus 2, okay? So these are our two answers for h of g and g of h of x. Okay, so this includes the first answer, and there is the second answer. Okay, so let's see which option matches the answer. So let's see. This is wrong. This looks right. Let's see. Marks for x. Good. The answer is option letter B. All right. So there you have it. Moving along to question 6. We're to find the inverse of the relation. Okay. All right. So how do you find the inverse of the relation? All you do is you just interchange your x and your y. Okay. That's what inverting is all about. This is your input, and this is your output. When you're doing the inverse, your input becomes your output, and your output becomes your input. So that's all you do, okay? So you can just switch. So looking at this, this is my original ordered pair: 1, -3, -4, 5, and 4, -2. I'm just going to interchange the x and the y's, okay? If I do that for the first ordered pair, I interchange these, it becomes -3 and 1. If I interchange these, I'll have 5 and -4. If I interchange this, I'll have -2 and 4. So there goes my inverse. So which one matches? Can be this. The answer to no, let's see. This is wrong because the 5 here is supposed to be positive. Let's look at this one. This is -3, 1, 5, negative. All right, this is wrong. -3, 1, 5, -4, -2, 4. Answer is D. So don't forget, anytime you're finding the inverse, you switch the x and y's, okay? And then that will help you find the inverse, all right? Now let's apply this idea to a function, a linear function. Now what is the inverse of the relation y equals 4x plus 2? I'm going to switch my x and my y's first, so I'll have x equals 4y plus 2. And then if I isolate my y, that will be my inverse. So how do I do that? That's a two-step procedure. I'll subtract 2 and divide by 4, and that will be my inverse, okay? So subtract 2 from both sides, and that gives us x minus 2 equals 4y, and divide by 4. Using reflexive property of equality, I'll have y equals x minus 2 over 4, and that's your inverse. So the answer to number 7 is D. All right, moving along to question 8, we have to find f to the -1. Okay, f to the -1 is just a symbolic notation, is the symbolic notation for the inverse. So what we're looking for is the inverse of this function. For symbolic convenience, I'm going to represent f of x with y. So y equals 7x minus 13. 7x minus 3 over 16. All right, so what's the procedure for finding inverse? As we did before, you just switch and solve, right? Switch and solve. Sometimes you might have to rename switch and solve. In this case, I renamed f of x, y for symbolic convenience, okay? So let's switch. If I switch, my x becomes my y, and my y becomes my x. So I'm going to have x equals 7y minus 3 over 16. Now let's go ahead and get y by itself. To get y by itself, we multiply by 16, add 3, and divide by 7. So let's multiply both sides by 16. So this divide out. Using the reflexive property of equality, I can switch my equation around. 7y minus 3 equals 16x. I'm going to add 3 to both sides, and that yields 7y equals 16x plus 3. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 7, and that will give me my inverse. So if I divide both sides by 7, I'm going to have y equals 16x plus 3 over 7. This is also known as the inverse. So f to the -1 of x equals 16x plus 3 over 7. So that's the inverse. So the answer to number 8 is option letter B. Okay. Moving along to question 9. We're asked to find g of f of x. So g of f of x simply means that we're going to be plugging in f into g. Okay? So in g of f of x, the parent function is g and the input is f. So let's write down the parent function first. G of x equals 3x squared. So I'm going to get it prepped to receive the input function. So replace your x's with parentheses. So g parentheses equals 3 parentheses squared. Okay? Now the name of the input function is f of x, and the value is x squared minus 5. So I'm going to put the name here, f of x, and the value is x squared minus 5. Okay? Now let's simplify the right side as much as we can. So it's going to become g of f of x equals 3 times x squared minus 5 times x squared minus 5. That's what square means, okay? Now we're going to simplify this. We're going to FOIL it out first. outer, inner, last. Okay? So we're going to have 3 times x squared times x squared is x to the fourth. X squared times 5 is negative 5x squared. Negative 5 times x squared is negative 5x squared. Minus 5 times minus 5 is positive 25. Combining the middle terms, we're going to have 3 times x to the fourth minus 10x squared plus 25. Now I'm going to go ahead and distribute 3 to everything, okay? Just distribute these 3 to all the terms in the parentheses. So if I do that, that's going to yield 3x to the fourth minus 30x squared plus 75. All right, and there goes your final answer. All right, so let's see. This option corresponds to option letter A. So our answer for this problem is letter A. Okay. All right, so that's that for part 1. Now we're going to advance to part 2, okay? But thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you haven't already done so, feel free to subscribe to my channel for other cool updates such as this. More videos coming from my Thanks again and have a wonderful day.